Joining me now is Justin Sadowski, legal director of the Chinese American Legal Defense Alliance. Justin, thank you for being here. You wrote in a friend of the court brief that the government's case is based on a racist foundation steeped in anti-Chinese sentiments and promoted by white supremacists. As you listen today to the government's arguments, did you hear racist undertones? Was it to you just clearly racist? Tell me what you heard today.
No, I think Solicitor Sauer was trying not to appear expressly racist, but I think he was trying to take those racist arguments that you see in the government's briefs in Wong Kim Ark and sort of say, okay, so maybe we're not going to go as racist as the government wanted in Wong Kim Ark, but we're going to go just slightly less racist because we're going to make this new rule that says if you're here as a domicile. The problem with that is in Wong Kim Ark, domicile came up. I think Justice Jackson made this point very poignantly towards the end of the oral argument. The whole debate over domicile in Wong Kim Ark was based on these sort of racist stereotypes about the Chinese, where that they couldn't be domiciled in the United States because they had some allegiance to China, and therefore their heart and home was always back in China, and so that these people were fundamentally un-American. And so the Supreme Court in Wong Kim Ark said domicile, that Wong Kim Ark was domiciled there, but that wasn't to create a new requirement for citizenship. It was to reject these racist arguments. And the government, by trying to then say, no, there's a domicile argument, essentially trying to bring those racist arguments back.
And then there's the argument that President Trump espoused just yesterday. He repeated his claim that the 14th Amendment was only supposed to have a very narrow purpose. Here's what he said.
If you take a look at when it was filed, all of this legislation, all of this, everything having to do with birthright citizenship, it was at the end of the Civil War. The reason was it had to do with the babies of slaves and the protection of the babies of slaves. It didn't have to do with the protection of multi-millionaires and billionaires wanting to have their children get an American citizenship. It is the craziest thing I've ever seen.
What do you make of that argument?
Wrong. The president says a lot of things, of course. The debates that were discussed at length in the argument today talked about, how broad to read it, and they could have said just slaves. They really could, and they would have used that language. You would have said the children of slaves are now U.S. citizens, and they didn't do that because they wanted a broader reading. They wanted, as Cecilia Wang so ably said, to stop creating exceptions to citizenship. And so you see this debate, that everyone talked about, the one you said earlier. What about the children of gypsies? What about the children of Chinese? And the framers of the 14th Amendment said, yes, even that.
I wonder if you can tell us what you're hearing from the folks you're in touch with in the Chinese American community about this case, what kind of emotions this is bringing up right now. We've been trying to hone in on the very real world impact, not just obviously of the decision, but just the fact that we're having these arguments.
So what we're hearing is fear and anger. I don't necessarily think all the fear and anger come from the direct and specific risk of citizenship being taken away, birthright citizenship being taken away in this case. And I think if you heard the oral argument in this case, I don't think that's a likely result of this case anyway. But what we are seeing is this sort of fear of Chinese people and Asian people more broadly being seen as foreigners. There's a wonderful Chinese civil rights organization called the Committee of 100 that just released a report about the stereotype of the perpetual foreigner. And just like, the original Chinese Exclusion Act led to these Chinese land laws that prohibited Chinese people from buying land, and then ultimately spread to the Japanese, and then during World War II, all the way led to internment. The concern is as Chinese people continue to be scapegoated and as foreigners continue to be scapegoated, that the place of Chinese Americans as Americans in this country will be at risk, both sort of softly in terms of, hate and ultimately hate crimes, as well as ultimately legally, and that these attempts to restrict the rights of foreigners will continue to increase and increase and increase until you see a Korematsu situation.
Justin Sadowski, thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking the time to help us out and understand all of this.